forgiveness
3,
in the hills of love
5, 6, 7,
on the sea of love.
9.
Love's gonna get you, baby.
Okay, so once again, hello, good morning. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody who is now watching us on the YouTube video, which Garrick will prepare for us. So thank you for joining us. Please watch all our videos. Some of you might even be watching it on BitChute. So watch the BitChute videos too. Okay, these are very interesting times. And there is an ancient Chinese curse that says, may you live in interesting times. It's a curse because usually when things are interesting, there's a certain element of it that is difficult and challenging. So these are interesting times. And yes, there are elements of it that are very difficult and very challenging. As many of you know, I am pretty outspoken in my views. I've always been very outspoken. That is nothing new. And a lot of people are outspoken right now with their views about the pandemic and society and how it's going. And I'm always good with that. There is something, though, that happens when these views harden into right and left ideologies that people adhere to and cling to with a certain ferociousness. And then the ideologies make the other side bad, and they make the other side evil. And of course, we're all very aware of how that works. And there are some spiritual people who, seeing this, decide to step away from these discussions. So they step away from anything that they might consider to be polarizing. And that has not been my guidance. I think we can have our viewpoints as long as we don't harden them into ideologies that make the other side bad or the other side evil. A word that kept coming to me this week is the word apoplectic. Apoplectic means to be overcome with anger or extremely indignant. And it comes from the word apoplexy, which actually means to have a stroke. So if you find that listening to the other point of view makes you apoplectic, like overcome with anger and extremely indignant, that's a problem. And that's a problem that I think we all have to deal with at different times. And when I become apoplectic by listening to the other point of view, then I know that I've got to look at my own ego. And I probably have to expose myself to the other point of view a little more than I have been, at least to desensitize myself and to desensitize myself from that apoplexy. If we're getting apoplectic by what the other point of view is, we have forgotten that the right wing and the left wing still fly the same bird. I mean, the right wing and the left wing are on the same bird. There's a beautiful picture on our program of an American eagle with a red right wing and a blue left wing, but they're both wings on the same bird. And you need both. You need both in order for the bird to fly. And for the spiritual people who want to step away from the discussion because they think the discussion is polarizing, that's like cutting off one of the wings. And the bird won't fly. And we want this bird to fly because the bird is going somewhere. And we need both wings to achieve the flight. In that reading that Reverend Kim read, there's a wonderful statement, and it says, whenever anyone can listen fairly to both sides of any issue, he will make the right decision. So you have to be able to listen fairly to both sides of the issue. And if you find yourself getting apoplectic when you hear the other side, you just got work to do. And you probably have to hear the other side a little more so that you can see the reason and the sensibility there, even if you're not going to agree with it. Okay, let's take something that is near and dear to many of our hearts. Let's take the Black Lives Matter movement. And I know many people here are really connected to that movement, and I feel an affinity towards that movement. I do think there is systemic racism in our culture and our society that needs to be exposed and talked about. But I'm also aware that there is another point of view that says the focus on Black Lives Matter and the problems that are systemic with racism is actually part of the problem. And if you listen to people like Candace Owen, who is a young African-American woman, very outspoken, or if you listen to Officer Brandon Tatum, who's Officer Tatum, a former police officer, African-American from the Tucson, Arizona Police Department, they have a different point of view. They think we should step away from all this racial discussion because they think it disempowers the African Americans by keeping them in a victim state of mind. Okay, I don't know if I agree with that, but I want to hear it because that's the left wing and the right wing, and we need both of those points of views. They're both there to fly the bird, to get to a new place. Also in that reading that Reverend Kim read, it says, "You have heard many arguments on behalf of the freedoms, which would indeed have been freedom if man had not chosen to fight for them. Yet the argument that underlies the defense of freedom is perfectly valid. Because it is true, it should not be fought for, but it should be sided with." So we all have views, and we all have views about what we think will keep us free and what we think will keep society moving, and to cut our wing off and not give voice to our views, and to want to cut the wing off and not hear the other point of views, that's not going to move us anywhere. So it's important to keep siding with our views, but it's important to keep open to the other point of view and not get into this attitude of fighting it. Or fighting for our side of view. But not fighting doesn't mean not having, because freedom should always still be sided with. So we should always be siding with the thing that we believe, but we need to watch that polarization that causes us to want to label the other side bad or evil. So there's a lot of things going on in society right now. There's a lot of discussions going on, and I think they're very important discussions. So there's discussions about face coverings, whether we should wear them or not. There's a discussion about sheltering in place, whether we should ease it up or not. There's discussions about vaccines and whether they're safe or not, and whether we should have them or not. There's discussions about medications, hydroxychloroquine, whether it's effective or not. And yeah, these discussions can get pretty polarized, but I don't think we have to abandon our positions about them. I think we just have to be careful that we don't find ourselves in a fight about them by making the other side, the other wing, bad or evil, because we need both wings to fly this bird. So to give a little background here, there's a tendency, and I understand it, that we want to believe things that we see out there in the world. Yet I believe A Course in Miracles tells us that we have to be aware of this, and we have to look at things with the Holy Spirit's discernment, the Holy Spirit's eye, and we have to look at the things that authority figures tell us with a certain amount of discernment, because attitudes change and society evolves. There once was a time that medical doctors thought the most effective thing that you could do for somebody that was sick was bleed them, bloodletting. And it seemed really logical. They believed in things called humors, and they believed that the blood circulated and that there were toxins or poisons in the blood. And so it made a lot of sense to bleed. They usually did it from the arm. They did this for centuries. Bleed people, let the blood drip and dispose of that blood, and then the person would, manufacture new blood, and the new blood would be healthier. So, this made a lot of sense, and sometimes they did it with leeches. And, you think about it, that was a very, very common medical practice. It was practiced from antiquity to the late 1800s, to the 19th century. It spanned over 2,000 years. And they probably had a certain amount of effectiveness with it because they believed in it, and the people who were getting their blood drained believed in it. And you know what it is, when you believe in something, it tends to work. So A Course in Miracles tells us, remember how many times you thought you knew all the facts you needed for judgment and how wrong you were? Is there anyone who has not had this experience? Would you know how many times you merely thought you were right without ever realizing that you were wrong? So we think we know all the facts, but we're frequently shown how we're wrong. But then this is telling us, even when we're not shown how we are wrong, many times we're still wrong. So the medical doctors thought they were doing a good thing by draining people's blood. It made a lot of sense. And I'm sure that's true with a lot of our medical practices today. A century from now, we're going to look back in that and think, geez, how did we ever think that was really helpful? I mean, we get a sick person with cancer and we shoot them with radiation, or we put poisons in their body, chemotherapy. The idea is you kill the weakened cells and then the body will regenerate. Doesn't seem a lot different than bloodletting to me, but people believe in it, and the doctors believe in it, and the people getting the treatment believe in it, and okay, it probably works. But I think it's probably more the belief in it that makes it work. And who knows what we're going to think a couple of centuries from now about practices like that. So I think we have to develop a good, healthy skepticism about things we're told by authorities. And so let's look at the government. The government is telling us all kinds of things these days, but the government has always told us all kinds of things. Let's just go back a few years. Let's go back to the Iraq War. Not that long ago, the government sold us on the idea that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Now, this is curious, considering there had been UN inspectors in Iraq looking for weapons of mass destruction for several years and had found none. And of course, the Iraqi government still claimed there were none. But yet, President George W. Bush and Vice President Dick Cheney, and one of the most highly respected people of the time, General Colin Powell, all band together, and Colin Powell went to the UN with photographs and arguments and convinced the American people mostly, and the UN, and a lot of our legislators, that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. And Congress voted to approve a military action in Iraq. Hillary Clinton voted to approve that military action. That's one of the reasons why she lost the nomination to Barack Obama, because he made a big deal about that was a really bad decision. So we signed on, the American people signed on to the Iraq War, and we went to war with Iraq. And it is estimated between 100,000 to 1 million Iraqis died. It devastated the country. It devastated their infrastructure. So you think, okay, maybe somewhere, between 100,000 and 1 million people died, but how many people's lives were just destroyed or terribly affected by all of that? 4,487 USA soldiers died. And there were no weapons of mass destruction. There were none. And the people who pushed that agenda, President Bush, Vice President Cheney, General Colin Powell, none of them were ever accused of a crime. None of them ever served any jail time. And it was all out of the fear that had happened around 9/11. And it was all around this idea that drastic measures were needed to keep us safe. A couple of months ago, I talked about safe, and just to be aware that safe is actually a curse. So to keep us safe, we went to war in Iraq, and hundreds of thousands, maybe million people died and were terribly affected by all of that because we thought we knew something, but we were wrong. Go back a little bit. The Vietnam War, the fear of communism, the idea of this domino theory, that somehow communism would gain this foothold and that threatened our safety. What was going on in the actual opposite side of the world was threatening our safety. So in the name of our safety, we went to war. 1.1 million North Vietnamese died. Between 200,000 and 250,000 South Vietnamese died. 58,300 Americans died. And those are just the ones that died. There's usually about 4 times as many, wounds and other problems, that people have, wounded soldiers. And then just think about the lives decimated and how we decimated that country to keep us, again, safe from communism. So, we thought we knew. Did we know? And so, aware of that, let me repeat the quotation that I read a moment ago. And this, again, is one of the ones that Reverend Kim read. Remember how many times you thought you knew all the facts you needed for judgment and how wrong you were. Is there anyone who has not had this experience? Would you know how many times you merely thought you were wrong without ever realizing that you were wrong? So we're being told all kinds of things by medical authorities, by the CDC, by the WHO, by our government. And do we really know? There was once a time when the government told us that smoking cigarettes was fine, maybe even healthy. There was once a time when the government told us that the insecticide DDT was fine. And, it was probably a good thing. It stopped insects from, eating our crops. It gave us more food. We would have enough food. We would be safe. We would be safe from hunger because of DDT. Remember how many times we thought we knew all the information we knew? All in the terms of keeping us safe. A Course in Miracles says your safety lies in truth, not in lies. Love is your safety. Fear does not exist. Identify with love and you are safe. Identify with love and you are home. Identify with love and find yourself. So I'm not against safety. I just want to look for it in places where it actually exists. And our safety exists in our connection with people. Our safety exists in our ability to be a free people that can exchange ideas of both a left and a right idea that may seem diametrically opposed, but when we don't demonize the other side and make the other side evil and bad, those two wings move a bird forward. And our society and our culture is the bird that needs to move forward. So we need to have a robust discussion where we hear all the different sides and not get so entrenched in our own point of view that we make the other side bad. And we know. We don't have to, answer it publicly, but I think all of us know what gives us that feeling like we're having a stroke when we're hearing the other point of view. And if that's what's going on, if you're having that feeling of being apoplectic, then you got some work to do. And ask the Holy Spirit for some help. The world needs the point of view of A Course in Miracles students right now. And that point of view of A Course in Miracles students is that there is nothing outside of you. That is what you must ultimately learn. For it is in that realization that the kingdom of heaven is restored to you. So there's nothing outside of us. Ultimately, there's no virus. Ultimately, there's no government that is trying to limit our freedom in any way. Ultimately, there are no people out there who are trying to do anything to us. We are not the victim of the world we see, because the world we see is coming from our own minds. That other side, that other wing that causes such a negative reaction isn't outside of us, it's coming from our minds. We have to take it in and integrate it into the totality of who and what we are, so that we keep flying forward. So if you can just remember that from today's talk, remember to be sensitive to those moments of feeling like another point of view is giving you a stroke, is causing you to be apoplectic. And remember that that other point of view, that other wing, we need it. That's what's flying us forward. And we don't have to cut that wing off by not engaging in the conversation. We have to allow a robust conversation so that we can, with an open mind, fly forward and give the people our new A Course in Miracles perspective of how we really are not victims, because there is absolutely nothing outside of us. And let the right and the left wing fly the bird of our society to a new and brilliant future. That's my talk for today. Thank you very much.
How beautiful you are. How beautiful you are. And all my forbidden fruits, I've got to keep on feeding like a dog in a cage. And now you lie here like honey in the palm of my hand.